Hello and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, then my name is Mel and I am a yarn dyer living on the Orkney Islands off the north coast of Scotland. So welcome, and if you're a returning viewer, then welcome back and thank you for watching. I am going to go through all the things that I completely finished knitting in 2022. We only have a few days left of the year and I am stubbornly still wearing my Christmas t-shirts and hanging on to my very damaged now Christmas nails, but you just have to eke it out as best you can. And yeah, if you're wondering, I am wearing a t-shirt I got from Scanehead this year, and I will quickly show you because it says "'Twas the knit before Christmas," and I love this t-shirt. But I will get into the knitting now because we're here for knitting. And if I'm looking very flushed and my hair is looking very staticky, it's because my husband put the wood burner on in here earlier and it is melting in here. It is boiling. I am very, very hot. I tried opening the door but the light went really weird in here, so I'll just have to plod on through. So I'm going to do this chronologically and starting at January, if there was anything finished in January, and just moving through the year. So January of 2022, and we were into easy, not too hard, not too much thinking knitting because we were in the throes of tax return season. So it was socks. I have quite a few garments knit last year, but socks was the easy go-to after a busy December and then an even more of a kind of a busier brain power January. So I knit myself, and we'll just have to ignore the shadow cast by my camera today, I knit myself these socks from a sock set by Cinnabar Pink. I don't believe that they're still dyeing yarn, but I did buy this as a set because I just fell in love with the colourway. The main body of the sock is knit in Rowanberry Lane and the contrast was in Rowanberry, and I just love them. These are just a vanilla pair with a slip stitch ball of the foot and the heel flap and gusset, toe up, Turkish cast on, which is my usual go-to, and a twisted 1x1 rib to use up what I had left of the contrast yarn. And yep, just very simple vanilla socks to tide me over whilst I was using my brain an awful lot in January, because I am one of those people that not only does their tax returns in January when they're due in on the 31st of January, but I also do my bookkeeping in January. I just basically keep all receipts and bank statements and then do everything in January because I'm glutton for punishment like that. The other project I was working on was another pair of socks that I had originally planned as a Christmas gift for my husband, but as I was knitting a second pair of socks for him which was ready for Christmas, these ones weren't quite as much of a priority. So I'm trying to get this one on the blockers, there we go. And my husband wears his socks in things like his work boots when he's cutting wood, so they end up permanently embedded with what's it called, sawdust. So if we see any sawdust, that is why. And again, I knit vanilla socks in a yarn by Rico, which is the Rico Superba or Superbar, and I used Drops Fable contrast yarn for the toes and heels. The heels are just a stockinette base of the foot and a garter. This is not going to show up because it's in black. A garter heel flap, and I put some micro stripes of the black in amongst the sock really randomly because I thought these together look like licorice all sorts. So I wanted some licorice all sort stripy sections as well rather than just the main body of the sock. So yes, more vanilla socks, toe up, Turkish cast on, 2x2 rib, and yeah, these are really soft. I have enough of this yarn left of the main yarn to knit myself a pair of socks, and I'm really looking forward to it because the feel of the finished fabric is really nice. It's soft and fluffy. Not sure how well they're gonna wear. I would have thought they'd be fine with it being a commercial yarn, but it does have a really nice feel, so I'm looking forward to having some for myself Not sure which contrast I'm going to do for my socks. But I also have an autumn colourway in the same base, so that'll be nice too in the future. Well, apparently after January I had had enough of knitting socks, so I decided I needed a winter hat in February, just as the winter's coming to a close, but I was obviously struggling with the cold, so I decided to knit myself a winter hat. And this one I knit a buffalo plaid hat, and it has colourwork to make these little kind of plaid squares and a great big pom-pom. The pom-pom was not finished in February, it was finished in November of this year and added on later because it took me that long to actually get around to finishing this. The hat itself was finished in February, and I knit a nice long 1x1 rib on this so that it can be worn kind of, this is not going to do my hair any good, but it can be worn turned up like that, or it can be worn slouchy style as well. And the yarns that I used, the red is kind of like a red and a black flecked yarn. This was some of my own hand spun yarn, and the grey is Gilead yarn, and it was the first time I'd used Gilead and I really like it. I have quite a bit of this grey left, and I also have a big ball of pumpkin orange, so maybe one day I will get around to knitting something quite autumnal as well with it. But I really like it. I love the feel of the yarn, and it's got a lovely kind of a bounciness, almost like not a marshmallowiness, more like a cotton wool kind of a bounce to it. It's really nice. So yes, so I finished this, and I also decided to start knitting garments. I didn't decide to start knitting garments completely, but I mean, I started to start my garment knitting for the year, and I think I started this back in the autumn, but it took me until February to finish it, or pick it back up to finish. And it is my Red Moon sweater. I know my moons are orange, but the pattern is called the Red Moon sweater, and I will link all the patterns down below if on the YouTube pages, in the description rather. This is knit with 100% drops alpaca, the orange and the anthracite, I believe it's the colourway is, and is it burnt orange or rust? It's one of the two for the orange colourwork. It is a colourwork yoke, and it's quite an intense colourwork yoke, because by the time you get to the large moon phase sections, I think it is a 60 stitch pattern repeat. So you do have to kind of concentrate on that section, and I think that's what kind of held me back a little bit. That, and I realised the yoke is really big. This is quite oversized, and I hadn't really intended it to be. But I do actually reach for this a lot. I'm not putting this on at the moment because I was wearing this morning as I was cleaning, and it probably could do with going through the wash now. And it does wash really well. I use the wool cycle in my washing machine, on my washing machine rather. I didn't get much sleep last night again. I use the wool cycle and it washes really well. It's been through at least twice now, and it is one of those that I grab and tend to throw on over the top of like this t-shirt or anything like that when I'm hanging around the house. I did put some short row shaping in the back because I do like a little bit at the back, and yeah, because it's 100% alpaca, I just have to be careful when it's wet that it doesn't stretch too much. But that is my Red Moon sweater, and I absolutely adore the yoke on this. If it wasn't such an detailed, intense colourwork chart, I'd be tempted to knit another one. Maybe I will sometime down the line, but it's not a fast knit, put it that way. I seem to take a bit of a hiatus then from knitting. I just lost my knitting mojo for a little while. I have no idea what I was doing in the interim, but I didn't really knit on anything for a good couple of months, and I didn't finish anything until May. In fact, I think some of these projects weren't even started till May. So I have 3 garments and a pair of socks here. Let's start with the socks, because then I can get rid of the sock blockers again. So these socks were kind of a palette cleanser, and something really, really easy. Again, just vanilla socks, and I just needed something mindless to work on to ease me back in. And I knit these socks, which are again just vanilla socks, toe up, heel flap and gusset, and a 2x2 rib cuff. I did contrast toes and heels in grey, and I did the top of the sock in a contrast pink because I ran out of the grey. So the main body of the sock is Drops Fable, and it is this kind of a pink, brown, grey, self-striping kind of faded yarn, which I really, really like. It's come up really, really nice. I have another ball of this in just kind of shades of brown and beige. The grey is a one that I got from the charity shop years ago, and it's a vintage sock yarn, and the top is just Drops Fable in pink, again because I ran out of the grey, but I do actually really quite like it. It worked out quite well because it ties in nicely with the pink on the sock itself. And again, it was kind of one of those palette cleansers, and actually I really like wearing these socks. The yarn is a nice woolly yarn, so it just kind of feels really nice on your feet. And then I was full on garment knitting. I don't know what suddenly possessed me, but you know. So I started knitting the Wild Posy Sweater by Melody Hoffman. Well, I started it, I finished it too. And I love this sweater. I would be wearing this if it wasn't so warm in here, because it is a lovely light, super lightweight garment. I used Drops Air for this, and I was loving how this was coming out so much. In fact, it's really, really bobbled because it gets quite a lot of wear. I often throw this over my pyjamas first thing on the morning when the house is quite cold, and I was enjoying it so much I decided, well, I thought I would have quite a lot of leftover yarn, realising just how little I was using. So I decided to also knit the Sarah vest, which is a free pattern on Ravelry, and with the leftovers. Turned out I needed to still buy another ball because I wanted to make the Wild Posy sweater a little bit longer and make it kind of an oversized cozy sweater rather than the cropped version, or the cropped length it is supposed to be. And so I still ended up having to buy another ball, but I slightly modified this to make narrower shoulders because the original pattern is quite wide, and I didn't want it to kind of drop down the shoulder. I wanted to be able to wear this with a dress with potentially puff shoulders if I chose to, so I narrowed that. But I really, really like this vest. I would like to knit another one in a darker colour, so it's a bit more wearable with my mostly dark wardrobe. Very lightweight again, and again pilled because it gets wear, because it keeps your body warm and doesn't restrict your arms, so I really like that. I never thought I would see the day I would be wearing a knitted vest, but you know, apparently age changes a person. So yes, that was 2 garments in the same yarn, and really happy with them. I'm planning on knitting another one of these in charcoal very, very soon, some point in, I don't know, in the next few months anyway. But I also was working on a colourwork cardigan because I still drift towards colourwork, even though I know it takes so long to do. And I made this is going to be very hard to show, and I will, if you haven't already seen, insert potentially some footage if I need to be able to show these garments off to their true potential. But I knit the Nightfall cardigan, which is a colourwork cardigan with a colourwork yoke. It is supposed to have fleece stitches all the way throughout, but because I used speckle yarns, I didn't bother with those. It has colourwork at the base, and you can see the fleece stitches, which should be throughout the whole garment, but I've just put them at the bottom where the trees are, like little snowflakes. I've also done the fleece stitches on the bottom to break up the solid colour that I used as my last colour in a fade, because this pattern is supposed to be a 5 colour fade. I've done 4 colours, but I've still done it as a fade, but because they're not solid colours, I have not done the fleece stitches. So it is 2 yarns from Mothy and the Squid. That is this colour here, which I think is Oh My Goodness, and the bottom green one, which is Hello Autumn. The other two colours, the bottom green is one of my botanically dyed ones in Nephrite Jade, and the top one is one of mine, and that one is Pumpkin Picking. Both the Mothie and the Squid ones are merino nylon, and both mine I believe are BFL nylon. Really happy with it. Again, it's one of those garments where if I need a cardigan, because I don't want to get too hot with a sweater, because I do love a cardigan to throw over things, I tend to grab this, and it's lovely and cozy. When I went to Perth Yarn Festival, I took this as my one sweater with me, and if it ever got cool in the apartment, I would just throw this on, whether that was over clothes or pyjamas or anything. It was just perfect to just give you that extra layer. So now we'll fast forward to July, and I was, you would say, kind of into summer knits, and I guess a shawl kind of is a summer knit, or you know, if you're going to choose an accessory, a shawl I would say is a summer knit. So I decided to knit the Winter Wonder shawl, and this pattern is a Helen Stewart pattern, and the yarns that I used for this are the bottom one, that is the lace work. I will try and get the lace work to show on camera. The lace work is from Old Maiden Aunt in the colourway Dreek, which is this kind of tonal pale grey. It is a stellina base, but it's not really going to show on cameras, but it does sparkle. And the main body of the yarn is some hand spun of mine in a, I think it's merino tencel or something along those lines, and it is a multicoloured hand spun yarn in a fade. The pattern originally calls for beads in between all these little eyelets in the pattern, but I didn't do that, and you're supposed to use a lace weight yarn for that. I just used fingering weight, and in place of the beads I did the sparkle yarn, and I'm really happy with it. I would love to do something with beads in the future. I'm very tempted to put beads in a sweater, a colourwork sweater. It is the, oh, I can't remember what it's called. It's one of the Caitlin Hunter ones. The Birkin sweater, and Kristen of Ullenvine did beads instead of bobbles in the colourwork yoke, and I really like that idea. But for shawls, I don't know, maybe one day I'll do a beaded shawl. The other garment that I did is a summer garment, and it is a vest in a cotton linen blend. This one is the pattern is by Ellie of Scandia, and the name of the pattern eludes me, but it means flower. And it is a summer lightweight vest that you can wear, which is knitted, and it's not going to make you red hot. Not that it ever really gets that hot on a island off the coast of Scotland, but there we go. And it is lovely. It's lovely and drapey, and the yarn is, let me find out. The yarn is by DMC, and it's DMC linen, and it is actually the Soleil shell. I've just found out the name of the pattern too. So yes, a summer garment for a summer month. Those were my two knits in July. So we're already rolling around into the autumn months, and that is September. And I was still trying to finish off one of my summer knits, and it was another pair of vanilla socks, this time in Regia cotton. I bought this yarn without realising it was a cotton blend, but it's fine, and it knit up really nice. It didn't feel horrible to knit with. This is a cotton nylon blend in the colourway Tutti Frutti, and just basic again, toe up, Turkish cast on, hair flap and gusset, 2x2 rib. The thing with the cotton yarns is they tend to kind of stretch out a bit, which is fine I suppose for a summer knit, but I had bought the cotton yarn by mistake. I hadn't realised it was cotton when I ordered it. I just loved the colourway. I just thought it looked absolutely fabulous, but it wouldn't be my first choice again. I think I still have more of this left, so I will obviously use it, but if I'm going to be wearing socks, it's because I want to keep my feet warm, and I don't think it really makes a huge amount of difference. I think, I don't know, I prefer a woolly sock. The other item that I finished in September was my arboreal sweater, and again, I love this sweater so much. I knit this in Drops Tweed, which is a woolly alpaca tweedy blend, in the colourway Carrot Cake, and the contrast is in Cookie Dough, and I just love it. I knit it like kind of full length sleeves, and I don't think I made a huge amount of changes to it other than just kind of adjusting for size slightly. So yeah, that is my arboreal sweater by Jennifer Steingast is the designer. So November, I know I missed out October because I was Halloween knitting, but I didn't get my Halloween knits finished until the beginning of November. So I decided to use the same yarn as my arboreal sweater to knit a Halloween pumpkin sweater. This one is the carved pullover, and it is a simple lacework design on the front like a jack-o'-lantern, again in Carrot Cake, and yeah, I love this. I adjusted it slightly in that I put a bit of short row shaping at the back of the collar. I also did full length loose sleeves rather than the 3/4 fitted sleeves, and this is supposed to be quite a fitted sweater where it comes in at the waist, vintage style, and is cropped. Again, I kept it cropped, but I made it more boxy so that I could wear it over the top of a dress and have it more of a loose style rather than a fitted style. And I really like this. This looks really nice over the top of some of my longer dresses, so I'm really happy with it. And yeah, so that was my first Halloween knit that didn't get finished, but there was another Halloween knit that didn't get finished, and again with the socks. So while I was at Perth, again, I bought some Halloween sock yarn, which I fell in love with. This is by Fiberpunk, and it is a gorgeous self-striping yarn in the colourway Alpha Bars Knickers. I decided to use a pattern called the Anastasia socks, which has this fabulous twist slip stitch design in the pattern, just to put a bit of pattern in without breaking up the self-striping, which I didn't want to put too much pattern in it. The contrast is just some black that I hand dyed myself to match up with the black striping, and again I kind of just added it to my usual vanilla sock. So Turkish cast on, slip stitch ball of the heel because it is a merino nylon, slip stitch on the base of the foot, stockinette heel this time, and a 2x2 rib, and I just added the Anastasia pattern to the top of the sock and all around the ankle, and I love these. I think they look absolutely fabulous. And yeah, I did knit another pair of these, and I will talk about that in a moment, in a Christmas colourway, but these were my Halloween socks that I'd hoped to finish by Halloween but didn't, but I still love them and I will wear them all year round anyway, because why wouldn't I? Also in November, I reknit the Outlander gauntlets, which I don't think are going to show very well. Let's see, because they are black, and it is... but you can kind of see it has cabling on the back of the arm, and it is plain stockinette underneath. It is not going to show because all the light is kind of here rather than in front of me now. It is coming very dull and cloudy. It is all this cabling and is based upon the gauntlets that Claire wears in season 1 of Outlander. I had originally knit these in 2018 and they were too small. I knit them too tight on too small a needle. So I ripped out all the yarn and I reknit them with some more yarn added to make a bigger size. And I used a 6mm needle where originally I had done a 4.5. The yarn is just Drops Alaska, I believe. And oh, you can kind of see if I kind of hold it at a weird angle, it's got this nice simple cable design, and these were really quick to knit up. I don't know why I've took so long to actually do it. So I'm really happy with them, and I have worn them several times since, whereas when I first did them I hardly ever wore them. So that just brings us up to December's knits, and I have 2 pairs of Christmas socks that I knit in December. Nothing else that I started actually got finished by the end of the year, and it's certainly not going to get finished in the next 2 or 3 days. So the first pair is another pair of Anastasia socks knit in West Yorkshire Spinners in, I believe the colourway is Candy Cane, and I knit them just like I did with the Halloween one. So I had a Christmas version, and I just thought the twist in it just was reminiscent of candy canes. And the contrast yarn that I used is Stylecraft from the Head Over Heels range that I bought last year of a Christmas set, and the bright red in the colourway Rudolph just worked really, really well with the West Yorkshire Spinners main colour. And then there was also the socks that have been on my needles for 2 years. I finally completed them, and that is the Little People socks by Audrey Borrego of Yarn Flakes. And for this I used the remainder of a sock set that I bought well, it would have been probably 2018, no, 2020, which is when I first started these socks, and that is the North Pole sock set by Biff Sugar Yarns. And yeah, I loved the colourway. I had some left over from a previous pair of socks that I knit probably around the Christmas time when I got the sock set. So I decided to finish using this yarn to knit the Little People socks. It is a kind of like a slip stitch, very squishy fabric, and I did that on the top of the foot, but I only did on the front of the ankle because when I tried to do it on the back also they were a little too small. I also added this to my vanilla sock recipe of the toe up slip stitch on the bottom because, again, merino nylon. And the top of the red for the rest of the sock I used Drops Fable in red. I don't know what the colourway is, and I was running out of the Biff Sugar North Pole yarn, so I just kind of made an extra long cuff so it's nice and stretchy and doesn't slide down. And they worked out really quite well, so I'm really pleased with them, and they're finally off the needles after all this time. I'll briefly touch on the 2 garments or 2 items that I haven't gotten finished. That would be my bubble cardigan by Stephen West, and it is still in the same place it was when I showed it on the podcast, the last podcast episode, and that is like that much on the front of the cardigan. But there's no rush for that. It's just kind of a relaxing knit, and that is using some Yarn Advent minis and some minis that I hand dyed myself, and hopefully they'll get finished at some point in the new year. But again, there's no rush. It's kind of a relaxed kind of dip into, dip out of kind of a knit. And the second one, which I was hoping to have finished for the Christmas season, which is the second swag sweater that I'm making, and it is in a fabulous yarn by Edelweiss Yarns and a sparkle base on the colourway Mountains, and I'm making this a cropped short sleeve version, and I've done the lace work in a plain undyed white merino tencel base, which is a nice shiny, quite a cool white to work in the lace work, and hopefully I'll get that finished in the next week or so. I had knitted most of the rib and decided that it was too short, so I'm having to rip out all the rib and knit an extra couple of inches on the body before I make the rib again. So those would have been, or certainly the last one there would have been a completed in 2022, but it's going to have to go on to next year's completed in 2023 and hopefully January of 2023. So that is all the things that I knit last year, and I can't believe we're at the end of the year again already. I will be compiling my Make 9 for 2023 in the next week or so, and I already have planned out what I would like to make. It's just whittling it down to 9 to mention on the video, and I think they're pretty much mostly all garments. That's pretty much, although I'd say 9 garments is a lot to knit in a year, but I knit 7 garments last year, so that was more than I had thought that I had done. So I'm going to leave it here because it is getting really quite dark. It was lovely and sunny when I first started recording, and now it is really, really dull, and I suspect it's going to sleet or snow very, very soon. Plus, Mum's arriving today anytime now. I'm surprised she hasn't arrived in the middle of recording, but fortunately she hasn't. So I'm going to say goodbye for now, and I shall see you on the next video. Bye bye.